I know we're a couple of minutes over. I just thought, because there's quite a few entering today, I just, while we're waiting for that to happen, as for example, we check our mic icon. If you want to on the bottom left hand of the screen, and you can also choose to test the sound by clicking on that. And you can do the same with, you can also stop the video. It's pretty self-explanatory. When you've got the red strike through, it means that you're muted and you won't have video showing. Okay, you'll be able to still see yourself, of course. We'll keep your mics muted throughout the webinar, so you can just hear the presenter. And you also note that you have the chat screen down below, which is very handy if you want to add a chat, or if you need to have, if you have any technical issues, if you can just chat to me, you can do that by choosing the drop down button where it says to, and you'll see me there sitting there waiting. Okay. Right, I suppose we should really get started. If you could just post your questions in the Q&A as a Q&A in the chat screen, and then we can perhaps do that at the end. It should go for approximately half an hour. And Ray will hopefully be able to answer your questions. Okay, so if you can mute your screens, mute your Zoom, please. Be great. Okay, and if you just be very respectful of others, just check your backgrounds, etc. We want to make sure that, for example, pinging phones can be distracting. Okay, so here we'll introduce Ray Cooke, who is the manager of Unity Training. And are you ready, Ray?
I hope so, Danny. I hope so. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Okay, I just want to start off by acknowledging I don't know where you all are, obviously, but no matter where you are, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of our country throughout Australia, including the Noongar people of Whadjuk Nation, and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. And we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Now this webinar was discussed with your union through Kevin Snedden a couple of weeks or so ago, and he asked if we could do this talk in relation to the membership, yourselves obviously. And I'll just put up the overheads that I'm going to go through. There, hopefully you can all see that. Okay, hopefully you can all see that. If there's any problems and you can't see it, please just let me know. Okay, so basically what I was asked to do is to talk with you people about the safety in your workplace, obviously, as it says there. The information that I'm going to go through briefly today is basically the legislation insofar as safety in your workplaces based on the current environment of COVID-19, obviously, and the additional information and concerns and challenges that we face in the workplace. Now, unlike a lot of people over the last month or two, perhaps you people have not been able to work remotely for obvious reasons and are still working at your workplace. So basically, I just want to briefly go through the legislation insofar as what's the employer has got to do to assist you to make sure that you're working in a safe working environment and that you're not exposed to undue necessary risks from the COVID virus that we're currently facing. So basically, the topics I'm going to go through is the duty of care of the employer and the employees, safety planning. There's a lot of talk, or there has been a lot of talk of late about planning by employers for safety for those companies and industries that are going back to the workplace versus those like yourselves that are still in the workplace, and safety planning. So for people like yourselves, safety planning should have already been done by the organisations, and I'll talk about that again in a All right, so I'm just going to move on about this. Now, basically, the legislation talks about, it's statutory legislation, which means it's law because it uses that word must. So you'll see up the top of that overhead there, an employer must. Now, the word must is there deliberately because it's statutory legislation, which means it's Crown bound, and that means that the employer, as it says there on that first dot point, must provide a safe working environment for the staff and or systems of work. Now, basically, in the legislation, it uses those words such as shall, will, and must, and they are mandatory prescriptive words. And basically, it means that the employer must provide that safe working environment. If they don't and somebody gets hurt, they may be prosecuted by the regulator, which in this case for us is WorkSafe. So they use the words shall, will, must. Now, I'll give you an analogy to this to try and explain this, because some people get it confused. So basically, this is the analogy. If you're driving your car from A to B, and you know when you got roadworks on the road, you've got those workmen on the side, and they've got those orange and black signs saying caution, workmen ahead, slow down, 30 k's, 40 k's, whatever the case may be. That 30 or 40k sign is a mandatory directive from the main roads department or the contractors telling road users to slow down to that speed for their safety and of the road workers. Now, if you go through there, hooning through there, say 60, 70, 80, and there's a multi-nova or a copper at the other end with a handheld, and you get pinged, well, bad luck for you because you've broken that law. The same with this for WorkSafe and the legislation, the shall, will, must. If they don't provide, if they don't do what they're supposed to be doing, they can get prosecuted by WorkSafe. Now, WorkSafe say they only prosecute if it can be seen to be in the public interest. Now, there's a lot involved in that statement, and I don't have time to go through that today because we've only got a short time for this webinar. But basically, they can prosecute. And they can prosecute not only the employer, but they can prosecute employees, contractors, manufacturers, and they do. And if you were to go onto the WorkSafe website, they've got a list of organisations, people, companies that have been prosecuted, why, and the fines, and all the rest of it. Now, obviously, like most things, there's a flip side to the coin here. So you've got mandatory words, shall, will, must, and the non-mandatory words we commonly would be using would be the old should, could, or would. Now, they don't use those three words, should, could, would, in the legislation for safety. They use the words practicable and or reasonable. So what they say is, for example, the employer must provide a safe working environment for the staff where practicable. And you can say, what the hell does that mean? You know, what does that mean? What's reasonable? So what happens is that, like you and I, the bosses don't have eyes in the back of their head, so they rely on staff to report unsafe conditions, acts, or hazards that they identify within the workplace. So basically, when the employer knows there's an unsafe workplace or condition, or there's a hazard here, there, and everywhere, they are duty bound to fix it. It's not your obligation to fix it, obviously, it's that of the management. So the analogy with the road signs is for the non-prescriptive is that if you go through that passage of the road, it says caution, workmen ahead, slow down, but it doesn't say 30, 40, 50, whatever. That's where judgment comes into play. As a road user, we need to judge what is the most safest practicable speed, or appropriate is a better word to use, to go through that passage of the road without putting people at danger or whatever the case may be. So what happens with the statutory legislation is that the employers must provide that safe working environment, workplace, etc. But because they don't have eyes in the back of their head, they put systems together. So that's the same part of this first bullet point. The system is reporting. You've got your hazard report forms, accident report forms, all those things, sorts of things at your workplace, or you certainly should do, of course. So they rely on staff to report those particular hazards and the like to them. All right, so moving along, what have we got here? I've got provide instructions, training. So once again, provide information, instruction and training so you can do your jobs safely in the appropriate way. So we move on here. and you'll say here, say the use of plant and equipment. You've got operational instructions on pieces of plant equipment if you do use those, right? Have you been trained, instructed appropriately from day one how to use that piece of plant equipment without hurting yourselves or other people inadvertently? Hazardous substances, so chemicals, gases, solvents and the like. Some of you may or may not have heard of this thing called, this acronym called an MSDS or an SDS, so Material Safety Data Sheets. And now a lot of companies these days have dropped off the word material and they just refer to them as safety data sheets. Now, I'm quite passionate about these because I believe that some people, let's put it this way, you don't need to literally work with chemicals, hazardous substances to sustain exposure. Now, of course, there are 3 routes of entry into the body through exposure to hazardous substances: inhalation, absorption, ingestion. Now, to give you one example, if somebody got a liquid splashed in the mouth, the MSDS or the SDS would say one of 3 things, other than to call the medic, the doctor, whoever. They'll say, give the victim either water to drink, milk to drink, or nothing to drink. Now, if someone's not aware of the content of the MSDS and the first aid precautions, and they go up to somebody and say, hey, have a drink of water, that'll fix you up, and it says give them water or nothing, milk or nothing, then obviously that person's going to inadvertently potentially make that condition worse. So it's very important that the employer does provide information, instruction and training over the MSDSs that you and or your colleagues use. If you have not been informed, instructed and trained on that, I would encourage you to talk to the employer, and or if you've got health and safety reps, talk to those people because they should be able to help you as well. So very important in that regard. And consultation and cooperation. The Act is built around this concept of consultation and cooperation, where we all talk with one another to improve the safety in the workplace where that opportunity arises. So it shouldn't be you, it should be the employer dictating to you for safety. It should be a consultative process where we're working together rather than the old us and them syndrome. You don't want to be doing that, even though unfortunately sometimes that does happen. And then PPE. I'm going to leave PPE and come back to it a little later because I want to elaborate on that as well. All right, now other things that the employer's got to do under what's called the regulations. They need to identify all hazards in the workplace. How do they do that? Reporting processes and systems and forms that staff use to report to them. Once they know about it, they've got to fix it. Then they've got to assess the risk of injury and harm, depending on whether it's a physical thing or an industrial disease, potential exposure to noise, dust, chemicals, etc. And then what's the best way to fix it or to eradicate that potential hazard? Obviously, if you've got a hazard in the workplace, best thing to do is get rid of it. That obviously isn't always possible, so you need to control it. That is the obligation of the employer. Now, if you have safety reps in your workplace and they've been trained, they would know about this, that sometimes employers think that the staff and all the safety reps are the ones who've got to fix things. It's not, it's them. In consultation, right? So we're working together as a team. All right, now the employees take reasonable care of your own health and safety. That's a no-brainer, really. Some people, I'm not putting you people into this category, but some people believe that it's the employer or the boss's job to keep them safe. That's obviously a fallacy because we've got to keep ourselves safe. Avoid adversely affecting the safety and health of others. So sometimes people might inadvertently leave things lying around that people can slip, trip and fall over, those sorts of things. So just do the right thing there. Follow the instructions. That's a no-brainer, really. And use PPE that is provided. And if you are using, depending on, if it's respirators and things like that, you need to find out what type of filters to be used. So this is once again where training comes in, or information sharing from the employer to you for the use of that type of PPE. And that's a no-brainer there, not to misuse or damage any equipment provided in the interest of safety. Yeah, sorry, I'm just checking my notes here. Okay. and reporting hazards, and everyone's got to do that, no matter whether you're the boss, an employee, the HSR, whatever, health and safety. Okay, so if you're still working in the workplace, which a lot of you people are, as it says there, EAs, cleaners, gardeners, healthcare workers, childcare workers, as an example, if I've left any of you people off from an occupational perspective, I apologise, I don't know all of you. Obviously, if you're concerned, talk to people and raise the issue with the employer immediately. They should be doing this, and this comes back to that planning that I was talking about from when we started, and I'll come back to that shortly. And prevention. Right, prevention is the name of the game here. What are we going to have put into place? When I say we, I'm talking about the employer, obviously. It's their obligation, it's not yours. What are they putting in place to make sure that you people are looked after and that you're not going to be inadvertently predisposed to exposures of COVID and, of course, any other hazards as it goes along. So they must talk with the HSRs, the health and safety reps. The health and safety reps that have done the training, they'll know that. They are your voice. If you have concerns, if you don't already do so, I'd encourage you to talk with your health and safety reps. If you don't have health and safety reps, that's something perhaps you might want to consider getting those people elected and trained. Up to you. I'm not here to tell you how to run your ship, so to speak, however. All right, so safety planning. Now, because we're basically now we're in what, second phase, aren't we? Phase 2 at the moment of this particular pandemic. So as we all know, the restrictions are going to be lifted from Monday next week, the 18th, to phase 2. So a lot of this is redundant, and it should have already been put into place by your employers when this first started. Now, I don't know your employer. I don't know what they have or haven't done. Hopefully they have done this. So a lot of this, as I've already said, is probably now redundant. You all know about social distancing. Actually, it's funny, I was listening to a webinar last week, and the chap who was giving that presentation talked about physical distancing rather than social, which makes more sense, doesn't it? Because we are physically keeping away from one another, that 1.5 meters or so. Hygiene products and cleaning products, what have you got in there? Regular hand washing, all those sorts of things that I'm assuming, I'm not here to insult your intelligence, you all know about those things. Respiratory hygiene products, so if you're using those, so for example, cleaners and gardeners, frontline workers, we need respirators, full face shields, things like that. Are they provided and are they relevant? And working from home, if that's relevant to you people, but I wouldn't have thought so based on your occupations and what you do. All right, so plans should include, this is what they should have done already, your employers, and share the information with you and then have input from the health and safety reps on your behalf and or even yourselves. There's no reason why they shouldn't be talking to you. Obviously, you're the people in the workplace at the front line. You're the ones who can make suggestions for improvement, tell them what the concerns are. So hopefully they have talked with you, and if they haven't, talk with them and or your health and safety reps to try and improve things. They must, in fact, must consult with you people, share the information and get your input insofar as improved opportunities. So what I'd be looking at if I was in your shoes is there a plan? If you haven't already checked this out, does it include measures for physical isolating, all those things we talked about, cleaning up? Are we vigilant insofar as sanitisation, cleaning regular, depending on your occupation, of course, that's going to vary. Procedures in place for workers to report if they feel unwell. Presumably that is the case, but I'm only speculating here, I don't know, obviously. Staggering start and finish times, I don't know if that is relevant to you people. It depends on the occupation, I suppose, that you have. And social distancing, talked about that. Do you have, this is our second bullet point, they're arranging for meetings to be held online instead of in person. Depending on what you do, toolbox meetings and email meetings or Zoom meetings or whatever the media that you have in your organisation for that sort of thing. And the last one there is influenza vaccines. Should be the ACTU in particular, they're quite passionate about this. They put out information saying that all employers must, if they use the word must, so it's prescriptive, provide free influenza vaccines for staff. What's happened at your place, obviously only you know, but food for thought. All right, employers have a duty to ensure health and safety of employees and take a systematic consolidated approach. I've already talked about that for psychological and physical. For psycho and physical hazards, go fisting gloves, it says there. So what are the strategies in place for the employers put into place for assisting people with potential stress concerns, mental health issues I'm talking about here? So these are the sorts of things, obviously, that, can be involved. Anxiety because of circumstances, personal stress, bullying can be a big one, being left out, being ostracised, things like that. People don't take too well to that. And FDV, so family and domestic violence. So they have what they call the 3 R's. So we can't all be experts at everything. So if you suspect a colleague may be having issues to do with FDR, the experts say that we should be trying to recognise, this is the 3 R's, recognise that might be the case for your colleagues. The 3 R's, I've got myself now, hang on, sorry, where are they? Recognise, response and refer. So recognise, response and refer. And the information on FDR says that at any one given time, around 3 million people in Australian workplaces are living with FDR. Amazing, staggering number, 3 million at any one time. I haven't plucked that figure, that's fact. And they say that they receive abusing phone calls or emails at work, or even a partner, their abusive partner might turn up to their workplace, and all these things should be managed by the employer to make sure that that can't be the case. So employees need to feel supported and speak out without the fear of reprisal. That is a big one that some people don't want to say too much. They don't want to rock the boat. So just food for thought there as well. And has the employer consulted with you? That's very important here, that they must talk with the union delegates from the school and the HSRs, if you have any, about their plans and the emerging plans and changing. Now that we're going through the phase 2 on Monday, you know, they need to do this insofar as how are they going to change the plans? What do they need to do? What are the thoughts of moving forward? What are the important aspects for that particular group of people through the employer? And that obviously can vary. Consultation, where are we? Hang on, just check my notes. Yeah, and performance management is another thing that some people do have concerns about, insofar as being, as I said, being ostracised, unrealistic performance expectations by management. Some people really get nervy about that. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, nervy, but uncomfortable on that. That's food for thought as well. This is something that should be in the plans that the employer, in consultation with HSRs and the delegates, should be looking at. Is all information updated? As I've said, a lot of this, because we know phase 2, it changes day to day. Things are changing all the time. So workers who speak different languages, English is not their first language. Has that been thought about by the employer and brought to the forefront? You know, these days it's easy to create a document, a safe operating procedure, whatever you want to call it, and then convert it into the language appropriate to that particular person, whether it's, you know, whatever the language is. So that's important, and that should be done within that plan. Disabilities for workers, people with what's called LLN, so literacy, language and numeracy issues or concerns or challenges is a nice way of putting it. So those sorts of things, have they been thought about by the employer? Do they have those things? Because a lot of people do need assistance for a variety of reasons there. And have arrangements been made on how to communicate? You know, is it us and them, or do they come out and talk with you in the appropriate manner? They should be talking with you in a cordial way. All right, workplace cleanliness. Once again, as I've said, a lot of this you all know about. Hand sanitizers, 60% minimum. Soap and water. A lot of the experts tell us that soap and water are the best way to keep yourselves hygienically clean, regular cleaning, appropriate standards for sanitisation. It's straightforward. I'm not going to insult intelligence there. I want to spend a bit of time on this though, PPE. So, healthcare workers, I've got their disposable face masks, full face visors, depending on what you do, of course, safety glasses, gloves, etc. And EAs, steel cap boots, if you're gardeners, things like that, caps, wide brimmed hats must be provided by the employer. Sunscreen and insect repellent, believe it or not, these days officially is PPE, must be provided by the employer. So sunscreen and insect type repellent if you're working outside. Obviously with the healthcare workers, a lot of those for the EAs that I've got there would be relevant as well, and vice versa. So is it being provided? It certainly should be. You know, I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, we had to buy our own this, that and the other, generally speaking, but no, officially under the legislation, it must be provided by the employer. However, I do understand that sometimes in the EBA or the contract that you have, it might say different. And if you've signed that, well, that's up to you to negotiate with the employer insofar as relevant required PPE. Alcohol-based disinfectant, 60%, talked about that, and first aid kits and have been restocked. And your first aiders, have they been updated in this sort of stuff for the environment for PPE? All right, so practical steps employers can take and already should have taken in your case because you've not been able to remotely work. Confusion, concerns about a lot of misinformation going around there, a lot of hearsay, and even with the government, you know, you get conflicting information dished out from the state versus federal governments, and you know, you just don't know if you're half a month coming and going sometimes. But this information here I put together a while ago, obviously it may be outdated now, so you just got to be mindful of the fact that when you talk to the employer or they're talking to you, that we're talking about current information as of today, not 2 weeks ago, whatever the case may be. All right, consultation, I've talked about that, very important. Feedback and suggestions. You people doing the work, the employer should talk with you insofar as how things can be improved or safeguarded. That's the same as if the employer is going to change a policy or procedure, or if they're going to bring a new piece of plant and equipment, for example, onto the workplace or into the workplace. Legally, under the legislation, they must talk with the health and safety reps, where you have them, in relation to that particular change in a policy or procedure. So this is talking about COVID-19. So what the legislation states is that where a change in policy procedure or the development of a new one or amendment or the new piece of plant equipment bought and put into the workplace, where it may impact on safety, the employer must legally speak to the health and safety rep so they can run their eyes over that particular policy, add value, take it back to you people, further add value in, and so as you're aware of it. So take that away that the employer, and safety reps have been trained, will know this, that the employer legally must talk with the safety reps, and then they can talk with you insofar as improving things. So the development or the ongoing development of policies and procedures for COVID, can it affect safety? Of course it can. So they must talk with the safety reps and then to you people as well. What do I think about the workplace? Dedicate someone with monitoring infection. Do you have plans? Well, a lot of this I've talked about already. Wash your hands thoroughly and review control measures. At the end of the day, consultation is the process here that the employer must be looking at and keep that talking going. All right, so just a few resources here. Now these overheads will be available if anyone would like to have copies of them. Plus this is being recorded. So this presentation eventually, Danny can say how long in a minute, but it will be on the Unity Training website. And you can look at it there, or anyone who wasn't able to attend this can go to the Unity Training website and watch it there. Now these resources and some of the stuff I've talked about today obviously have come through the ACTU. That's one of the biggest ones. So they've got a great lot of information on their website insofar as, and it's updated all the time, obviously, insofar as even things like posters, posters on COVID for this, that, and the other, and you can print them off and put them up in the workplace. It's in the face of people, so it's it's in their minds when they see it. Education department, obviously, for a lot of you people who work there, health department, and Safe Work Australia. They're the ones who are running with a lot of this as well. And some of the information I've shared with you today was from the Big Place Hall Council over in Melbourne. Okay, Danny, over to you.
Thank you, Ray. Okay, have we any questions? I've been having a look at our chat to see if anyone's had any questions. Mostly it was, originally there was one on the PPE in regarding to as gardeners, talking about the steel cap boots, I think. They wondered if it was under the EA PPE in the slide, but I believe that was more or less sorted out. It's the gardeners.
Yep.
The gardeners PPE. Okay.
Yeah, that should be provided by the employer, subject to what it has in the EBA or contract. But if you've signed a contract where it says you provide your own PPE, that would be unfortunate. But officially, yes, it should be through. It's legislated. The employer must provide PPE.
Okay. Any other questions? Surely you must be running with lots and lots of questions, no? Here we go. Gardeners have been given the role of clearing playgrounds from Catherine Roberts. Is that correct? Is that everywhere? Gardeners have been given the role of cleaning playgrounds. Is everyone aware? Is that happening at every school?
If it's talking about the playgrounds, what, within the Shire or within the school? There's a school like preschool.
In school, I believe.
Part of the school grounds.
Would that be right, Catherine? You can unmute yourself quite happily if you want to have a chat. Catherine Roberts.
I can't hear them.
That's all right, I'll have a...
If I can ask, our school gardener is given the job of spraying the verandas, the gutter, the downpipes, the play equipment that's outside after every recess and every lunch and every morning.
And sorry, Catherine, and your question is?
I think she's just stating a fact.
Okay.
That's what their gardener's been doing.
Okay, sorry, I thought you was asking a question. Yeah, sorry, yeah. And look, each organisation does it differently. Whatever they think is the appropriate regular sanitisation is up to them. But they should talk with you people as well, obviously. Okay, Danny?
Have you got a question? Is it Les?
Just on the school gardens cleaning, I know some are doing it voluntarily, but the schools are supposed to be getting in extra day cleaning staff. The gardener doesn't have time in his normal role to be cleaning playgrounds as well. My school's still got them moped off.
Right. So...
Sorry, was that a question or comment? Sorry.
No, just a comment.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it, to get that balance, but yeah, it just depends on the organisation.
You can also raise your hand if you need to. There's a button down the bottom there that you can click on if you have a question. It's very hard to see a lot of people, but that's if you want to ask a question.
So Danny Mitchell put a hand up.
There's a little button down the bottom there, a reaction you can actually choose, and you can put your hand up, and it'll put a little hand in your box there, so you can see if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, Michelle, you can just unmute yourself and ask a question.
Okay.
Michelle needs to unmute herself.
Yeah, so on the face masks, if EAs want to wear them and choose to wear them, are you saying that they should be provided by the school?
Sorry, love, say that again.
If we want to wear a face mask, are you saying that the school should have a stock for us to use, like provide us with a face mask?
Definitely, yes.
Okay, we don't have that. And also, talking about the plans, you know, the department has a plan. Should our school have a standalone plan as well for our school?
Yeah, you can do if they wanted to. This is what you refer to as self-regulation, and self-regulation means that the individual organisation or school, in your case, they can either adopt and adapt the existing plan by the department,
yeah,
and do a cut and paste, or they can just write their own. Up to them. There's no right or wrong way, subject to what your department requires, and I'm not privy to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, Danny, Michelle Pira, she's got a hand up now. Can you see?
And she's desperately trying to.
Thank you. I couldn't find the unmute button. My name actually Alicia. I just had to borrow my teacher's laptop.
Oh, sorry, Fred.
No, you weren't to know. That's okay. So my question for us, we had a meeting yesterday with our organizer, and and she sort of came with that we needed the alcohol disinfectants from 60% upwards. We should be using those. The thing is, our school, you know, there's always room for improvement, but we've been given the sanitizers, and down in early childhood, we've been given some methylated spirits with some lavender oils. I know, and then we found out yesterday they are not the right things that we should be using, and we were sort of washing our tables in between sessions. So I suppose my question is, how do we get those correct 60% alcohol things? Because even our cleaner was a little bit sort of taken back that that's the things that we should be using.
Yeah, well, look, a couple of issues there is one, you know, consultation with the employer is the important one. If it's come to your attention by the organiser, I don't know if the organiser's been talking with the principal or whoever they need to speak with to try and negotiate that being corrected. Alternatively, and once again, this is where I'm not the expert insofar as what your department dictates, if that's the right word. That's probably not the right word. Requires is probably a better way of the schools to have in place. So the department might have a policy. So if you went onto their website or ring up their safety division of the education department, they might have that sort of information available to you either verbally or online, and I'm pretty sure they would do.
That's correct, because Les actually brings up that point exactly. There's a list of chemicals to avoid in schools on their icon, so okay. They have that. Thank you, Les.
Okay.
Any other questions? Here we go. We have a Sim from, I'm not too sure who Sim is, but Sim. Did you want to ask a question, or do you want me to read that question out on behalf of you? You're very welcome to ask it if you like. Sim? No? Okay. I'll ask the question for you. They actually mentions, she's asked a couple of questions actually. So it says that EAs haven't been told specifically they can't wear face masks, but the general attitude has been that it's frowned upon. And it's just flat out that is it just flat out that they can? And if so, is it during class, outside, or both?
Yes and yes.
That's probably a school.
Yeah, so yes and yes. So if they want, you know, if they want that face mask, they feel vulnerable, the employer is certainly legally liable to provide it. But once again, if it's a school, I've got to cover my tail here. Just check with the department to see what their directives to the schools are, because obviously I don't work there, so I don't know, but generally speaking, under the law, yes. Under the safety law, yes, but check with the department, cover your tail.
Yeah, there's a few people that have brought up the fact that, you know, they're told they can't wear them, they don't have any spitters, so it's all okay. It's a very confusing message, I understand that, but as far as legislation is concerned?
Yeah, as far as legislation is concerned, the answer to those questions is yes, it's your right, and yes, it's their obligation. But I would encourage you to cover your tail and ring up or contact the department first. Otherwise, if you go into the principal and say, yeah, we want this, or you've got to follow that, then, you know, you haven't done your research, you might have egg on your face. So all I'm doing is trying to encourage you to do your research first.
Okay, I know there's been some discussion on the chat about Glen 20, the good old-fashioned Glen 20, and what's use and where it can be used. Not specific questions, just a lot of comments. It does talk about, is there a specific COVID team at the department? That's something I'm not too sure we can answer. That might have to be a COVID team at the Department of Education. That one I can't really answer. That
I'd just have to go onto the department's website and have a look.
I'm sure there probably is, and yep, that would make sense. But I'm not too sure who they are. I'm not too sure if you know.
Yeah, with Glen 20, I saw Maria Smith shaking her head there. Insofar as they're not very good. Now she's smiling because I've dobbed her in. Yeah, very carcinogenic it can be. So this is why you need to look at the MSDS or the SDS, whatever it's called, for those not familiar with them. You know, and if you're not sure, because let's be honest, sometimes, and Les, I think you'd agree with this, is sometimes you need to be a bloody rocket scientist to understand some of the jargon on those MSDSs. You know, there's a lot of information there, and some of it will go over your head to the wicket, but it does for me as well. So if you're not too au fait with it, just bring up the manufacturer or look on the website for that particular MSDS. All right, any other questions?
Okay, we have a hand up from, I'm not too sure who this person is, but it's, I've got a code of some sort. I'll unmute them and I hope that will pick up who they are. There we go. No, won't let me unmute. So whoever's put their hand up, unmute yourself and please ask your question. I'm just going to have a hunt for you. 010929. Okay. Bit of a hunt round for them. It's a bit difficult when there's quite a few.
Yeah.
You're very welcome to ask a question, or has it already been answered?
Right, so whoever have you put their hand up, Debbie?
They had, but I can't unmute them. I don't know why.
Who is it?
It doesn't give me a name, but I'm sure they know who they are. So whoever put their hand up, quite happy for you to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Or can they type the answer?
I think you might have actually. It's, yeah, I can see you there. Let's try this way. No, definitely won't let me unmute you. I can see you. I can see you there, and you can't. And I know you can hear me. And your thumbs up. Yes, was it answered? Okay.
Right, so lady, the blonde-haired lady.
They were answered. That's good. Like nice to know. I like to check these things. Okay. Well, I think we've come to the end. I'm afraid we've run out of time, but I'd like to thank Ray and thank you all for your questions and your interest. It's been really good. There is a webinar running tomorrow. If you'd like to join us, it's called Happiness in Uncertain Times with Julian Pace from Happiness Coast. So you can register on our webpage. Okay. And of course, all our future webinars will be announced if you'd like to join us. It's all free to join. Any other last words, Ray?
No, just talk with one another and keep safe. And if you need to have anything clarified, just get back to us. I'm happy to help you. This was organised through Kevin Snedden. So if you forget me or my name, just ring up Kevin and happy to answer any other questions.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Thank you for attending and hope to see you in future webinars.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.